watching the COMMS Syndicate live stream.
It's 11:59 on Radio Free America. This is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall.
We'll do it live. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
All right, welcome to the live stream. We've got Jared from 2 Alpha Solutions, and I believe that Drew from the Terminal Element, he's going to be tentative. You may see him in the chat as well if he can't make it, but if he's able to join, it might be a little bit later in the show. But we do have a special guest. Rhea from Rhea's Ham Shack is with us. Thank you for joining. And for those watching who are active on amateur radio, as always, you can send us comments or questions via JSATE call. And Jared, I guess we're going to be on 20 meters, so that's 14.078 megahertz, and you can direct your comments or questions to callsign group at TCS. And let me just jump over the...
Just trying to get that set up here now. And I should be good. I'm on the beam, on my tri-band beam, and I'm facing right about 280 degrees, 290 degrees from Central Virginia. So that covers pretty much the entire country.
Excellent. Well, we've got a few things to cover. So I guess if Jared's able to get your message, he'll read it on the live. And I've got the comments section going. So if you have any questions or comments for Rhea, feel free to throw them out there, and I'll read those as well. But we're going to cover a few things. So one of the topics will be the American Radio Relay League, also known as the ARRL. We'll also cover ham radio culture, and then as far as current events, we can talk a little bit about the potential impact of tariffs on amateur radio equipment. But with that, let's get started with meeting our guests. So you can find Rhea's YouTube channel by searching at Into RJ, that's November 2 Romeo Juliet, on YouTube. And Rhea also has a show on Radio Miami International, which is a shortwave radio station that broadcasts from Okeechobee, Florida. But Rhea, for those not familiar with your content, can you tell us a little bit about your background and both your YouTube channel and shortwave radio show?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Rhea, call sign N2RJ. I do a lot of content on shortwave. I do a weekly show on WRMI Legends, 5050 at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. I also do a YouTube channel, as you can see here, Rhea's Ham Shack at N2RJ. Kind of just interesting enough, started as where I live stream my radio. Then people just ask me questions about radio stuff. So I said, okay, I'm going to answer it online. So that's what I did. And that is pretty much it. What else do? I do a lot of things you guys do. And, I do radio. I love HF, VHF, UHF, DMR, D-Star, that kind of stuff too. I just actually got a new radio that I'm going to show on the channel too.
Oh yeah? What'd you get?
The ZBitX.
What is that one? I'm not familiar with that one.
So yeah, I might have to steal away in a bit and get it to show you, but it's basically a little tiny portable 5-watt HF radio that has built-in FT8 and is built on a Raspberry Pi.
Cool.
So if you're familiar with the SBitX, this is the ZBitX. It's like a little small version of the SBitX.
One of our other co-hosts, he couldn't make it because he had another commitment, but he's really into all the Raspberry Pi stuff too. I was trying to get into it myself, but probably too many projects going at once. But that sounds really cool.
Yeah. So I don't think I have to tell them to update the website, but the website's a little out of date for RMI Legends. I'm on at 11 now because they have some Christian programming before me. So. Oh
yeah. I see that they did list your schedule here.
Yeah, that's wrong. I've been pushed up an hour. That's okay.
Okay. Well, good to know. Good to know for the folks that want to join and listen to your show. But I love that you do shortwave radio. I mentioned that when we were kind of just chatting before the show started, but I know there's not a ton of shortwave broadcast stations left in the U.S. I'm familiar with WRMI, which obviously you're currently on, but also WBCQ, and I think they're up in Maine. But I don't know, what brought you into shortwave radio? Like, what made you decide that you were going to do a show on WRMI?
So yeah, that's an interesting one. Actually, like I said, I started out kind of like pulled into the YouTube. It was COVID boredom. and then like lockdown boredom, everybody's doing stuff, and then I started out a live show that I still have sometimes. I need to go back doing it more often, called Live with Rhea, and that one was on Sundays. Then Ted Randall from that time he was on WTWW, which was another shortwave station. He said, "Why don't you take your show and put it on shortwave? You'll get a wider audience." I'm like, "Well, okay, here. Why don't I do something better? Why don't I produce a show for a shortwave?" And I do that, and even better. So I started doing that. I think it's like 2 years in now, and I've been doing it almost every week, and it's been great because you have like a lot of great people, a great audience, and you reach a lot of people you normally wouldn't reach on the internet. So
Yeah, I kind of was flirting with the idea of maybe kind of taking sort of what we do here and maybe doing something like that, but didn't really pursue it much further. I was trying to figure out like how much does it cost? Like how much is airtime and what equipment is needed for something like that?
so generally, airtime could be probably like uh I don't want to. So I'm not tell. I can't tell you
You
what
don't
I
want to
pay
give
for
away their
airtime.
schedule, their pay.
No,
Yeah,
well, the thing is, I can't tell you what I pay for airtime.
sure.
So that's NDA. But some stations they charge like $100 an hour or something like that, or
Right.
some might be a little more. It varies. I mean, there are all sorts of considerations. BCQ was advertising $50 an hour for shortwave, but I don't think that's realistic because electricity costs are high on that.
Right.
But yeah, but you can kind of get an idea. I mean, essentially, half of these stations are airing like Brother Stare like 10 hours a day, and he pays for most of the shortwave. And Brother
Yeah.
Stare has been long dead, so
Yeah, I know on the one up in Maine, a lot of it's a lot of Christian broadcasting and stuff like
Mhm.
that, and that seems to kind of dominate most of the airtime, it seems. But
Right.
one question I have for you, so I was kind of I mentioned to you earlier that I was pretty much stalking your content, your YouTube channel, and all that to kind of prepare for this. But there's a lot of different camps within the amateur radio world, and a question I kind of had for you is that do you consider yourself to be more of like a hobbyist, or is your focus on like emergency and backup communications? Where do you kind of lean?
So to that one, I'll say yes. Um, Meaning all of the above. So my interest in ham radio started out as technical. Uh, so professionally, I do cybersecurity, but my degree is in electrical engineering. I'm actually working on one in computer science. So I'm very much a tech person, and I love ham radio for the tech, and that's pretty much why I'm in it. So my favorite ham radio is the one I just soldered together, right? And that's what got me into. But generally, yeah, I'm a hobbyist. I'm an experimenter. That kind of person. I do some things on prepping and emergency communications. I'm also in the 2A community, and also I do a lot of just like teaching others things. I'm actually going to be writing a book on prepping, but can't give too much details about that yet.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, and I was just kind of curious about your background because I know that I guess it was a couple years back, but you were previously involved with the ARRL as a, correct me if I'm wrong, director for like the Hudson division.
Hmm.
But
That's
eventually
correct.
you ended up stepping down from that role. But the reason I ask is when it comes to the inner workings of the ARRL, I'm an outsider. So I'm just curious as to what it's like working for them. Can you tell us a little bit about like what your role and some of your responsibilities were as a director?
So yeah, so I didn't actually work for the ARRL. The ARRL is governed by a board of directors who are volunteers from the community, believe it or not, and we serve for no pay and just to serve the community. The paid staff is the paid staff, and they're you know they're paid and hired by the league itself. So the role I had was a director. So we have a board of director, 15 directors, 15 vice directors. You have officers, and you have a CEO. and CFO, and you also have a treasurer. So you have a number of different people. The board of directors essentially at bare minimum meets twice a year to do governance work for the AWL, and by that I mean essentially set policy, approve a lot of the AWL's governance functions, things like approving budget plans for the year, and boring stuff like that. But in addition to that, we also do a fair amount of outreach. Like, I used to be at every Hamfest, and I used to show up at Dayton Hamvention. I spent a lot of time in the AWRL booth. And then a lot of other things I did were basically listening to members, So if you do governance, but you don't just do it in a vacuum, you have to listen to the members.
Right.
And it's kind of like a ham radio politician, so to speak. But I kind of hate that because I didn't really feel like I was doing politics. I felt like I was doing service to the community.
You had done a video, I think it was like a couple weeks ago, maybe. But it may have been a little bit longer than that. But you were talking about with respect to some of the like FCC changes that they're kind of soliciting for. You had an idea, I guess it was to basically break up the structure of the ham license and basically having two. I thought that was a pretty good idea because next weekend I'm going to go take my extra, and having to take 3 license tests kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But I liked your idea where you were just like, hey, let's break it up into 2. You've got the basic one and then the more advanced one where you can broadcast on 1,500 watts basically. So.
Yeah, I think, I did submit comments to the FCC. So there are 2 sets of comments. There's one I'm actually on the board of another organization known as ARDC. And ARDC essentially is they're a foundation that has $100+ million endowment, and we basically donate money to various projects. So I'm the treasurer for them. So I basically handle all their investments and stuff like that too. But that aside, we wanted to send comments to the FCC on this delete proposal, which is essentially to simplify the regulations. Because since President Trump got in, their whole thing is and Elon Musk too, they want to basically take out anything that's not efficient.
Right.
So the FCC has a lot of inefficiencies, and I was going to say that a lot of inefficiencies, and a lot of it is they just have so many regulations to regulate like edge cases. And my thing is, and a lot of people, others who are like-minded like me, is like, we don't need all of this. We need something that's simple, and the license structure doesn't need to be complicated, because for most people it's a license to learn. So you have, my proposal was 3, initially was 2, but then I settled on keeping the 3 license classes, but give full frequency privileges to all of them, lower power for the entry-level license, full power for the full license, which is a general, and keep the extra as what you call a knowledge endorsement. So I don't know if you're familiar with CCW reciprocity, how it works and stuff like that. So
slightly, yeah, a little bit. I think Jared probably is too.
So I live in New Jersey, which is an interesting thing because they always try to pass laws and stuff. But we don't have constitutional carry here. Right. In some other states, they have constitutional carry. And yeah,
they're going to tax the rain.
Huh?
I was just being flippant. I said they're going to tax the rain in New Jersey. So.
Yeah. So like they have constitutional carry in most states, and but some of those states like Florida still have like a permit, because if you go to another state, you will still need the permit. So the idea of the extra was that you can have the extra because if you go to like Europe or another country, they will not recognize a general class license as a full amateur radio license, but they do recognize the extra. So, give people the ability to operate and then let them demonstrate the knowledge in case they want to operate in another country. Right. That was kind of like my thought behind it. But yeah, other countries like the UK and a lot of Europe basically don't give frequency privileges. They don't like segment off stuff. They basically just give everybody all bands, but say lower power.
Right. Yeah, no, I could get on board with that, and it probably sounds a lot easier than what you had to go through at when you lived in Trinidad and Tobago. You went through a video where you talked about that licensing process, and that sounded a little bit grueling because you had to wait quite a while to get it. And I think they only do it like twice a year or something to that effect. And if you don't pass, you have to wait.
Yeah, they change that now. They actually what they do is they make people take the FCC license, and they have volunteer exam teams do that there. So, yeah, they've simplified it. But back then, I got licensed in '97. You had to basically take the British exam, and that was only offered twice a year. Realistically, it was only offered once a year because the examination centers didn't hold a second session.
So, had you continued as a director with the ARL, what are some things that maybe you would have liked to have seen implemented or even changed? Because I know they're kind of a little bit of a political lobby.
I think that it's kind of a tough nut to crack in the ARRL because especially with lobbying, and they don't really officially lobby. I think the main thing they want to get this antenna legislation passed, and I think it's kind of hard. I would have focused more on the state level because I think you have a lot of success on the state level, so you do it state by state. Other things I would have done though, I think they definitely need to focus on bringing value for the members because I don't see today where they're giving a lot of value for the membership. And my thing was always, well, why is membership falling? We had a bump in membership when I came on board, and I don't know if that was because of the bunch of us that came on board, but then it's been going downhill ever since. I think, people figure that now it's like up to $60, $85 a year.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of people, that's a little much. I'm a life member, so I paid once. And I donate. I didn't donate this year, but I donate some years. But I think generally, though, they need to figure out. I do like what they're doing with education. I must admit that Steve Goodgame with his Teachers Institute is doing a good job of that.
I let mine expire for what you said, that I didn't feel like I was getting really very much of anything for my membership.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I still support them. I mean, they're essentially, I view them as our strongest voice. It's kind of like the NRA, right? I'm a member of the NRA, even though I don't always agree with them.
Well, I was looking through some of your content, and I came across something on your Facebook that caught my eye that was really funny. So that's a great segue into this. And it reads, would you still be an ARRL member if they didn't advocate for ham radio in front of the FCC or Congress? I don't know.
Well, to be honest, if they didn't, I wouldn't. Because I think that, I don't care about I don't even care about the magazine. I still get the magazine, but if they stop doing that, why am I supporting them?
I like the magazine.
Do you think the ARRL really has that great of an impact with Congress and the FCC?
I think in the past they had, and I think it comes up and down. Like they've gotten a lot of things done, right? And they've held off some proposals, and even internationally through the IARU, they've held off a lot of proposals. I think though that Congress is a very tough nut to crack, right? Because Congress basically is, it's an embarrassment, right? They just don't really do anything useful. And but as far as the FCC, they've gotten a few things done. They actually got this symbol rate thing passed where you can now run higher speed on Pactor, WinLink. So at least they got that done. They've been trying to do that for years. It's just, I don't know. I think they definitely need to change some strategy. They're getting things done, but not as much as I would like them to do. But having been inside, I kind of see why. And some of it is that they're getting in their own way, and the other one is basically they have to deal with the system.
Do you think the FCC really cares about amateur radio unless they're getting money from us?
I think so. The FCC has said how they like us for They like having us around. I think the word I would describe with the FCC and us is largely one of indifference. They're willing to take our spectrum when the wireless companies need it for 5G or whatever. But I don't think they're going to take 20 meters, and I don't think they're going to allow, like shortwave stock trading, for example. I don't think that's going to pass. So I think the word is indifference. They see the value in having an amateur radio service. I don't think they're necessarily going to champion us as if we're like the shining beacon on a hill.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering how much impact, people's comments in response to this delete thing in respect to amateur radio was even going to matter, because it seemed to be more aimed towards businesses, but it seemed like a good opportunity for us, in that world to say something. But
yeah, I could show you what I filed.
Sure.
If you want me to show you. So let me bring it up here. So ARDC is kind of interesting. We did not. Okay. How do I share this file?
I believe there's a way to present on your end. Let me.
Yeah, I can. Okay.
I can? Okay, good.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Macintosh security. And
I think if the FCC starts selling off parts of our spectrum, especially the HF stuff, people are still going to operate there because they're going to be so pissed off.
Yeah. So I don't think they're going to sell off. I don't think they're going to sell off HF necessarily, right?
No, but in the event that they would, I don't think they will. But...
All right. So I
got to remove mine. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
And let me add. There we go.
Right.
All right.
Well, I typed this up. I basically gave a background on myself. I've been licensed for this long. I'm in amateur radio and GMRS, and my quote unquote professional endeavors in ham radio. I talked about our basis and purpose, which is experimentation, learning, and emergency communications. And that early radio regulations were crafted in response to problems with interference because of the Titanic, right? But at the end, I put here, our regulations have not kept pace with advanced technology and needs of licensees. So the first one is that our bands are micromanaged. We don't have the freedom to do what we need on the bands. And we basically do a lot of archaic things. So we divide up each amateur radio band into smaller portions and only allow certain types of emissions. No other country does that, right? I think maybe one or two. I think maybe just Japan does that. And I don't even think they do it as intense with us. They give Morse code priority on most of the bands, which I think is insane. I like Morse code. I like CW. I'm a CW operator, but I think, giving it preference over everything else is just insane. Data emissions like WinLink and spread spectrum and all that stuff is severely hampered.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have some of these rules that need to go. And I basically put specific things I like to see deleted, right? So I say delete these rules, replace it with a simple rule that allows any emission type on any amateur radio band. And we use voluntary band plans. We're adults. We could police ourselves, right? We don't need, the government to tell us that we need to, how we need to operate. And then the licensing, right? So the other licensing, it was the same proposal I described, which was we have the technician general, advanced, extra, novice, and we just keep those, but give everybody access with more power, with limited in power. Okay. And then privacy regulations, and then also allow freedom of equipment design. So, like, for example, one thing I want to put in there that I've neglected to put in there was that why should we have to use two radios for ham radio and GMRS? If we're a ham radio,
that's fair.
If we're licensed ham radio operators, why do we need a separate radio for GMRS?
Well, in all honesty, there's probably a lot of people that are already doing that.
Yeah, but the one I did put in was
95% of them.
Yeah,
true. Yeah. The one I did put in there is for LDMOS power amplifiers, because we have a rule that says that amplifiers must not have more than 15 dB gain. And I don't know if you can see there, I have an amplifier in back of me, a Flex Radio Power Genius, that is purposely limited to 15 dB gain. So that means I have to pump 50 watts into it to get full 1500 watts out. And I think it's outdated,
Well done. You came prepared. Look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is you'll see that published probably in about a day. ARDC's comments are more along the line of they want to make things easier for digital communications and that kind of stuff, because that is like their genesis of their roots. So
Why can't the FCC fix their website? It's terrible. It is one of the worst things on the internet.
yeah, that is that is definitely something that and it's funny because I have a friend who's a software engineer at the FCC. He wouldn't tell me why their website is just rubbish. But he but
Probably
they're
a little bit of
I agree.
gatekeeping.
They have like old stuff with like I think Cold Fusion and IIS and old technologies on there.
Right.
It looks like it's from 1995 or something.
Well, we even talked about, I mean, there's some things that are also probably ambiguous, going kind of back to the delete thing. Our last episode that we did, I mentioned one thing that I was interested in is maybe letting GMRS link repeaters on the internet, because it's pretty specific in there that, well, it's not really specific. It's a little ambiguous about that you can't. And so they actually had to put a memo out. I think it was like a year or two ago saying that you couldn't, but I mean, everything else is hooked up to the internet these days. Why not? But
I think they wanted to discourage the use of mega linked repeaters, because there's only a certain number of channels. And I kind of get why they want to discourage that, but I think they're doing it in a backdoor way. And the FCC does things in a backdoor way for a lot of things.
Well, we got some comments. I'll show a couple of these. So Bobby Bama, good evening. First time watching your live. Thank you for joining us. And let's see. So this is Terminal Element. He's our other co-host who can't be with us, but said, I'm glad you're making YouTube videos and appreciate your thoughts on FCC deregulation. Grunt Proof, welcome. And let's see, we've got Scruffy McScrufferton, who is a frequent flyer here. Call signs being on public databases should definitely be deleted.
Yeah, I had people show up at my house because they found my stuff in the FCC database. Like what?
Yeah, we're doxing ourselves. I
wrote a review on Amazon about an antenna, and then it was a TV antenna, and then the guy wanted help installing it. So it wasn't like a stalker. It was just somebody needing help. But he found me, and then instead of like emailing me, he showed up at my house. I was
That's scary. Yeah, I mean that's kind of a trip, because there's already some interesting people on the internet as it is. So, I mean, I'm sure you guys all post videos, and occasionally you'll get that one person that's having a really bad day and decides to take it out on you in the comments section. But
we tell our kids, don't meet strangers on the internet. And meet strangers on the internet.
Yeah, my kids are. Yeah, well, my kids only they talk with their school friends.
Yeah,
that's kind of like who they're allowed to talk to.
But I mean, having your personal information, and I know a lot of hams they'll put a PO box instead of their address, stuff like that. But I mean, I intentionally kind of obfuscate my call sign for that reason. I don't blast it out there just because it makes me a little bit nervous. I mean, I guess it's not really a big deal. You're using yours on a lot of stuff, Rhea. So maybe I'm a little overly paranoid, but I don't know. How do you feel about that, Jared?
About
having your basically people being able to go and look you up on the FCC website with your call sign.
Don't like it at all.
Yeah, it's and I think it's kind of like, so like with the FAA, right? If you have a pilot's license or something, you can actually opt out of having it published, or you can actually even put like a separate address, like a PO box. So for my FAA licenses, I put a PO box.
Hmm.
Which you can do for radio licenses too, but you should still have the option of not even having that, because you can get
Right.
a lot of fan mail that way as well.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Well, that kind of is a little bit of a segue into our next topic, and I wanted to kind of get your general thoughts on ham culture. And so, if you've been around the internet enough, forums like Reddit and many others, there's a lot of talk these days about ham culture and how some perceive certain hams as FUDs and gatekeepers.
Yeah.
I guess, what's your opinion of the current state of ham culture? Do you think that, I don't know, there's some legitimate complaints about that, or do you think it's people that don't understand ham culture that are, I don't know, kind of just giving opinions about something they don't quite understand?
So ham culture, I think, used to be, it comes and goes. It used to be a lot worse. I think today I don't see as much, um, you know, elitism as there used to be.
Hmm.
Like I remember when the U.S. Abolished all Morse code requirements, and that one was essentially, you could have sworn
People are
that
losing their minds over it.
they
Right.
lost their collective minds. So that is, that I think was definitely, and if you look on somewhere like QRZ.com, you would see there were people on there who essentially just beat up on people who
Yeah.
didn't walk uphill both ways in the snow, you know? But there are definitely areas where human beings kind of want to sort each other into hierarchies, and people want to be elite super hams and look
Right.
down on the noobs. So yeah, I think that is definitely there. But I also think there are a lot of friendly people. I've met some really great people in ham radio, including some I actually currently quote unquote work with at ARDC, um, and people I've met professionally. So it's like,
I guess the point of view that I've taken is everything's kind of relative. So,
hmm,
you're going to find some crazies in just about every hobby or endeavor that you're in. I mean,
right,
you're part of the 2A community as well.
right,
So, I mean, I'm sure you've seen gear snobs in that world too. We have our own.
yeah.
I don't think it's anything that's really. I think some of the things that people complain about aren't really unique to us.
Well,
The ham radio.
yeah, like in Jersey, for example, people like me who like ARs and modern rifles
Hmm.
are looked down upon, the hunters who just want to shoot deer,
Right.
You're just
right?
some kind of extremist.
Yeah, they're no, they blame us for all of the stupid laws that get passed here. I'm like, no, they're gonna pass it anyway, right?
Right.
There it's divide and conquer, you know, and because I have an AR does not make me, a bad person, because I use it responsibly. But at the same time, um, I kind of respect some of the traditions, like CMP. Like I actually went with Ham Friends and we did CMP matches and stuff like that. So it is, I respect some of the tradition, but I think some people need to leave their egos at the door.
Agreed. Well, and there's some of the more negative people on the internet that I've seen. They'll claim things like ham radio's dying. I don't know. Do you think there's any truth to that statement? I mean, I know with the proliferation of cell phones and other communications technologies, it's probably not as popular as it used to be, probably in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. But I don't know. You think it's dying?
I think it's changing, and I think a lot of the change is making people uncomfortable. Um, I don't think it's dying outright. I think a lot of it is just changing, and I could go into a billion ways of how it's changing, but I'll give you a few. One is a rise of FT8 and JS8 call and modes like that, and because of that, you find that a lot of people are anti-digital because,
Yes. Yeah,
right,
they are.
they think that ham radio is escape from modern society, but it's not. It's a technology hobby, and some people want to do digital stuff. They also so that has kind of taken place with the Morse code snobbery. The other one is people kind of think that ham radio is like only for X purpose. Like some people think it's only for emergency communications. I've had people tell me that. And some people think it's only for contesting DX. Some people think it's only for certain things. But in reality, ham radio is a very big tent. And because it's a very big tent, you will find that there will be a billion different opinions on it, right? And I think generally though that the way you deal with that is you do what you like, you find your group, and then you show people. But if they don't like it, that's fine.
Yeah, and to your point, there's a ton of people who are, I call them purists. I used to have a 66 Mustang at one point, and it looked stock, but I had a lot of original equipment style parts on it because I had to replace a lot of broken ones. But I went to sell it, and this one guy that wanted to buy it was a purist and didn't consider it a Mustang because not everything wasn't all original. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, well, all original parts from the 60s lasting this long would be pretty special.
Yeah.
That's not this car. But you get some of the same kind of attitudes, I guess, in amateur radio, where like, if you connect your radio to the internet and do DMR and stuff, it's not. I've had people tell me that that's not actually amateur radio, and I don't agree with that. I think it is.
Yeah. What's a common one I hear? Real radio is glow in the dark. Meaning that if it doesn't have tubes, it's not a real radio. I like tube radios. I have a ton of them, mostly shortwave radios, but I like all of them. I have SDRs, I have all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's anything with taking kind of, and this is what I do, I take kind of a layered approach to communications because I am definitely more into the like emergency communications camp than I am the hobbyist side. Like, you're probably not going to catch me out on the weekends doing fox hunts and stuff, but you will catch me out in the desert with my rifle with all my radio gear that I'm taking that day. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I bought this actually because I used to do a school club, and I bought this for the kids to run around and fox hunt.
But I mean, in fox hunting in school, I think it's a great skill that you should certainly dabble in if you're a ham radio person, because I think it's pretty fascinating. I mean, Jared, you were kind of dabbling in that a little bit and messing around with that like Kraken SDR thing as well. And I mean, the technology these days is so amazing now that when you apply it to something like fox hunting, it's pretty scary how accurate some of that equipment can be. But
yeah, the Kraken SDR, excuse me, it's like scary accurate.
Right.
I took it out to California back in November for Grunt Proof's Sear Challenge when I was out there. And the contestants were only using radios the one day. And I was able to see them immediately as soon as they keyed up.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, immediately. And within a couple seconds, it gave me a fairly accurate, generalized accurate area of where they were. Now, had they...
How general is this area? Like
a couple 100 meters.
Oh.
I mean, it gave us a good idea of where they were. So we went to that area, and we didn't know it at the time when we were searching for the survivors, the contestants. But it got us pretty close to where they saw us, but we didn't see them.
Wow.
We found this out after the fact.
Yeah. Honest to God, this is the first time I've heard of that thing. And
I'll look it up on the internet. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's called the Kraken SDR. I think that's the right name, right?
It's extremely sophisticated, and it's about 10 levels above my pay grade.
It's like $1,000 though, isn't it?
It's $500.
800.
Well, you got to buy the
500
antennas,
for the
right?
unit and 200 for the antennas.
Okay.
And Kraken SDR actually sent it to me for free to use at the Sear Challenge. So
Yeah. So, that again goes back to the purist argument. Purist fox hunters are going to say, well, that's cheating.
Well, it's today's technology.
It is,
Right.
yeah. No, I totally get it. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it is today's technology. It's fascinating.
Right.
I think if you're using it to locate transmitters for, for utility purposes,
I also have this.
yeah,
That's the
You
old
know,
school one. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's on a scanner. It's not even a transmitter, it's just a scanner.
Well, and I'm sure when that thing came out, people were like, "That's cheating,"
Right.
you know.
yeah, yeah. But I don't think ham radio is dead by a long shot. I think it's going to change. I think as long as we have spectrum, and that is a battle in and of itself. There's always going to be ways to do radio.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's dead either. I think there's just as many, if not more, people on the radio now, but they're all in little diverse, I don't want to say cliques, but areas of the radio. Some are doing 2-meter sideband, 2-meter FM, 2-meter C4 FM, 2-meter D star, 440. They're doing FT8, FT4, JS8. There's so many diverse areas that they're spread out across that you're just not seeing the amount of people that's really there, because you might not be interested in doing FT8.
True. Yeah.
My interests vary over the years. Like of late, I've been involved in these contacts with the International Space Station, and it's like it's not even like you do like 10 minutes of radio and you do like 6 months to a year of planning. So
One of my local friends here, he's just now getting into EME stuff. I was down there a couple weekends ago at his house, helping him set up some EME arrays on his little short tower for moon bounce. They're just so many specialized areas in it. I mean, there's something for everyone. When I came back into amateur radio, 4 years ago or so, after being away from it for a while, I had no interest in FT8 or JS8 or the digital stuff. It was all I just wanted to do voice. And the more I got involved, and now I have a 100-foot tall tower here, and all this other crap that you saw. Now I'm interested in doing FT. I don't do it all the time. It's something for me to do to pass the time if I'm bored or whatever. But I do
The
like
learning curve is steep for a lot of these digital modes, though.
I'm going to lose that skill set. It's a perishable skill.
Yeah. Yeah, the learning curve though it's steep. Like JS8, that's not an easy one just to out of the box get started. But
No. And I'm not a computer person, so for me to set everything up, I couldn't do it. I didn't know how to do any of that. So the friend of mine that I did the EME stuff with, the antenna arrays, he came up and got all the computer stuff set up for me.
What do you both think organizations like the ARRL, wow, I keep messing that one up, ARRL, and I suppose various ham clubs around the country can do to draw in a younger generation and get them interested in amateur radio so it doesn't die?
I think it starts in school. I got licensed in school, and I think so. Teachers have a captive audience, and I went and returned a favor to my kids' school. I'm not a teacher, but I actually ran their radio club for a year before the school closed down. The kids are interested. The kids find a lot of things very interesting. We built stuff. We built Tesla coils. We did science experiments, and we prepared for this International Space Station contact. And that the kids were interested. But it's not just kids. I find you could bring people in of all ages. I think you just got to find something that is interesting for them. Don't try to force them into your niche of the hobby, because
True.
not everybody likes the same thing. Introduce them to as many different things as possible. I had kids who loved the fox hunts. I had kids who loved the building things and making sparks with Tesla coils. And I had kids who just love, we get on HF and we make contacts,
Right.
Yeah. But, their eyes all lit up when they did the International Space Station contact. So
that one is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first got into amateur radio, I learned about that. I'm like, hey, that'd be kind of neat to be able to talk to the space station on like 2 meters or something. But didn't end up going in that direction. But it looks cool, and I could see how kids would be very excited for something like that because it's not just talking on a repeater or some of these other things that I guess organizations do. But no, that's cool. That's cool that you're doing that with those kids.
Yeah.
And I think the school thing is the way to go. If they would introduce it, like science class or physics class or something in middle school, and just an introduction. This is radio. This is what you can do with it. Let's build a little crystal receiver or whatever, and you can build upon that. Just introduction to the service, I think, would be best.
Yeah.
You don't. When I was in high school and in junior high, we didn't have any of that stuff. I mean, hell, we didn't even have a wrestling team that I wanted to be on. But there's so many people that are our age that don't even know what amateur radio is because it's never introduced to them.
Yeah, and in my last job, I worked at a large international bank, and we had a big technology division. People doing all sorts of tech, everything from banking services to cryptocurrency, essentially, and all sorts of stuff. Like, we're developing tech for that. And then people saw the antennas on my car, and they're like, "What's that?" I'm like, "What?" It's ham radio. And they're like, "Oh, okay." And they asked me how I got such a short license plate. I said, "It's my ham radio call sign." So it is. A lot of people don't know about it, and you kind of introduce them. And I actually got a few people like of my age, kind of like interested and licensed, and that's pretty good. So it's not just kids; it's like everybody.
Right. Well, we can move on to our next topic. I suppose we'll jump into kind of a current event. And so I saw this recently, and quality two-way-radios.com, they posted a notice on their website on April 3rd, just kind of talking about the ongoing tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. But in part, it reads, to our valued customers, we're already starting to hear from suppliers such as ICOM, Motorola, and Kenwood regarding the impact of the tariffs. Products from Japan will be subject to a 24% tariff. All ICOM and Kenwood radios are manufactured in Japan with some components sourced from China. Motorola radios are manufactured in Malaysia, which will face a 24% tariff. Products from China will face a total of 54% tariffs. I believe the tariffs on products from China have increased since the posting of this notice to their site, but it basically goes on to detail that due to the volatility of the current market, they won't be able to guarantee prices, but that prices will only be increased in response to an increase from their suppliers. I guess Rhea and Jared, what are your takes on this? You think
I guarantee
we're going to see some spikes in ham radio equipment?
I guarantee the radios that the government buys for themselves through Motorola or Harris or Biddix King, whatever, are going to be duty free, and there's not going to be any tariff, so they don't care.
Yeah, especially like what, you're going to tariff a whole police department full of radios? No, you're going to tariff the FBI, the NSA.
Right.
But I do think there is an opportunity. Flex Radio makes their radios in the US, and I love my Flex Radio. I love ICOM too, to be honest. I've been using ICOM radios for a long time. I think so. I'm of two. I don't have a crystal ball on this tariffs. I think the tariffs will, as much as people be disappointed, I think the tariffs are just not going to work out, and I think they're just going to be gone. I think
it's a negotiation tactic more than anything.
Yeah.
Like it.
But I think it's just not going to go long. And I see a lot of places using this as like a sales tool to drive sales, get stuff before the tariffs kick in. So, but who knows? But it will have an impact. That $25 Baofeng is probably going to cost $50 because we have 104% tariff on China.
We should pull all our Baofengs together and sell them,
I have too many. I have like a
I do
whole
too.
box full. Just been accumulating like that.
I guess we've been sitting on them for the right time, right?
Yeah,
Kind
yeah.
of
I
like
like
Like,
to see my
during
keys
COVID
already
when
out.
ammunition was super expensive, and I'm like, hey, I've got some extra 22 I'll sell you.
oh god, yeah. I have a safe full of 22s, but New Jersey didn't hear that. But anyway, it's like the yeah. So I think, I think in the end this will work itself out. I think we might see some modest increases in the short term. I think it's going to be a balance, but I think eventually it'll work out. I just don't see this realistically going on long term. Because I mean, not only because of the price of consumer goods, but also the stock market is just gonna, you know, the stock market can't handle the tariffs. You know, um, I, I'm kind of like I'm of two minds on this. I kind of see what he wants to do, and I think that yeah, and my position on the tariffs is sure we can enact them, but we should have prepared beforehand. I really liked what Elon Musk was doing with his lithium factory that he wanted to process lithium in the U.S. I'm totally on board with that, right? Because he needs a ton of batteries for what he's doing. But right now they're just buying old batteries from China, and
Hmm.
that's not sustainable. So they should have done that. They should have brought the computer chips here, and Apple used to make Macs in the U.S. Why can't they do that again? And if we have that in place, then we could look at tariffs. But I think now this is a little too much shock and awe. So, with regard to the radios, I just don't think that how it's going to go long term. I think there may be some temporary price increases, but I don't see, like for example, an ICOM 7300 selling for $5,000.
Right.
I could probably see it selling for like $1,500.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I saw an article, I think it was yesterday, and they were making some exemptions to computers and certain computer parts, things like that. I think that's probably more directly related to your comment earlier. What are they going to do? Prevent entire police departments and first responders around the country from having the equipment that they need, and they're obviously not going to do that. But they did have some exceptions to transistor radios, but I didn't see transceivers on that list.
Yeah.
With the local public safety departments and radios, a lot of that's bought on state contract too. So even if it is tariffed, a lot of times the federal government will absorb that and bring it down to the state level, and then the state level has the state contracts because they can buy it in bulk, and then or they contract. It's been a long time since I've had to deal with the state contracts. The tires are the same way. When public safety departments buy tires, like for the police cars and fire trucks, you get special pricing through the state contract, which I think alleviates a lot of the tariffs and a lot of other fees and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think. Well, I don't think they're going to tax themselves, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah, I think they're just going to tax us.
I mean, I'm not an economist, but so I'm not well versed in all of that stuff. But I was reading that I guess we had tried this a couple of times in our country's history, and it didn't have the results that we wanted, I guess, or we're hoping for. So, I don't know if it's going to work out this time or not. I hope it does. I hope that, everything that they're saying, that they're expecting, I suppose, comes true. But they weren't lying. There's going to be some pain in the meantime. And I think you're definitely seeing that. You're seeing that with the stock market, and you're seeing that with basically the ongoing basically trade war with China that we've got going now, where they both keep upping the ante, and I guess we'll see who blinks first.
Yeah, and I have inside info on China on companies how they do business in China. They're prepared for this. They're not gonna
Right.
just roll over. They're very, very tough negotiators. So, Trump might be a tough negotiator, but I think they're also tough negotiators. I don't know how it's going to shake out. I think I definitely do think though that they're going to have to do something to regain the U.S. market, because a lot of their commerce is in the U.S. market.
We do buy a lot of goods from
Yes.
everyone, and I guess the theory is that it's going to hurt others more than it will us, because we're, at the end of the day, we're the ones buying everything. But to your point, I think you're right. China's they've been preparing for this for a very long time, and they're not a country that I think views themselves as an up and coming country. I think that they view themselves as regaining former greatness, and I think that that's probably the first thing to understand about them, because I don't think that they're unprepared for this by any stretch of the imagination. I really don't.
Yeah, I don't think they are either.
They're not stupid people.
No.
Right.
No.
I think what we might see is that, depending on where the tariffs end up, like we might see like a lot of manufacturing shifting to those places. Like Apple seems to be interested in making iPhones in India instead of
Right.
China.
Do they have the infrastructure set up there already?
They apparently already make some in India.
Did they already? I didn't realize that.
Well, they make some stuff in India. Yeah.
Like some of the components.
I'm not sure what they make, but I was told that how they actually make some stuff in India, and they have some manufacturing, contracts in India. I don't have firsthand knowledge of that. This is basically just what I read in various articles.
It will be interesting to see how, global manufacturing shifts out of all, at the end of all of this, if it'll make a dent, or if we'll just negotiate better prices, meaning will manufacturing come back to the US, or as you say, maybe Apple will start manufacturing in India as a result, but I don't know.
Yeah. So
it'd be hard for us to bring all that manufacturing back here in short order, because we lost it all.
Right. So Apple used to make their stuff with a company called Foxconn, and then an Indian company actually bought one of the other manufacturers called Pegatron, and they make they have Tata is the name of the company that bought 60% of Pegatron. I'm just reading this, and then what they do is they have facilities in, I think it's Chennai, which used to be known as Madras. So they're they're definitely moving toward India, and they've been planning this for a while now. I think by the end of this year, they want to have 1 in 4 iPhones made in India, but they might have to accelerate that.
Yeah.
And to be honest, India is probably not a bad deal, because they actually have a pretty strategic partner with the administration, because Trump has met with Narendra Modi and the Prime Minister of India, and they're friends apparently. So
yeah, allegedly he's been friends with Modi for years, but
yep.
We'll see what happens. But I know we're coming up on 1 hour, and I know that you've got a hard stop, but
I could say a few minutes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, if you want to keep going, we'll keep going.
Yeah. It sounds interesting.
Jared, how are you doing on time?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good for the night. So.
Oh, the night, huh? All right. Well, do we have any messages over on JS8 call yet?
I have not seen a single one come through. There's some heartbeats, and I guess there's some kind of a JS8 CQ party or something, or QSO party. I'm sorry, but that's all I'm seeing.
Well, for you folks over that are ham radio people, this is your chance to hone your skills. So jump on JS8 and send us a message if you got a chance. But sometimes we get them and sometimes we don't. I think the last show we had, we got a couple that Drew read out loud. But no, I don't know. I'm very interested to see how the whole tariff thing shakes out. But I think that's going to be, I don't know. It may be a few months before we really see what that's going to, how that's going to turn out, I think.
Yeah, my other advice for hams is learn to build things, and learn to probably love used equipment too, because that's not tariffed. I have a good few. I have some really nice acquisitions of used gear from like Silent Keys and other
Mhm.
people, and they've served me well. So if you want to, if that's one way you can get around it,
Yeah, I think repurposing old equipment, that's something that I look at when I need to do something in my ham shack. I look at old equipment I've got and try and figure it out if I can reuse it or build something. But of course, people don't always have the technical ability or space for that as well. But
yeah. Oh,
Jared, you look like you've got the space.
yeah. You look like you have a workbench back there.
You do.
Yeah, I got my office here, my Radio Shack, is out in my shop. It's not even in the house. So outside of this little room is the shop area, and I have a bench out there to actually work on stuff. But yeah, the as far as the used market goes, it's hard. People don't have the skill set anymore. With the new people coming in, I don't know if I'm saying it right.
There are people that don't know how to change a tire. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what I see a lot of is people want plug and play stuff.
Yeah.
They want to open a box. They don't want to learn how to program a radio or how to do anything with it. They just want it to work the way they want it to work. And there's no skill sets that they're being utilized to do any of that.
I think that's a good point because it kind of relates back to some of the ham culture stuff where you've got friction between hams and non-hams. And I mean, even I come across quite a few people that they just want me to hand something to them on a silver platter. So it might be, how do I program this radio? Just tell me what I need to do. And, or they'll ask, what kind of radio should I get? I'm thinking about getting into radio. And I mean, I'm sure Rhea and Jared, if someone asked you that, you'd probably have kind of the same response that I usually do, which is, well, what are you trying to do?
Yeah.
But people don't want to hear that. They get like their eyes glaze over and, they just stop listening.
Because I don't think they have a perception of how big this can really be.
It'd be like if I, was interested in firearms and I asked Rhea, what kind of gun should I get? Well,
What do you want?
Right.
Yeah.
So I would tell you get a musket.
Get a high point.
Get a high point. Get
High point and a
heat cannon.
Bowfang UV5R, and you're good to
Get
go.
a heat cannon. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. People just they seem to want things handed to them.
I'm sorry, and I kind of blame the testing process for it too, especially the technician level, because they don't really teach you or test you so much on the operations and the modes of the radio and explain it much. They want to stress more on the rules and in the protocols more than anything, which I understand. But you get general class, that people that are licensed as a general class, they still don't know what a split frequency is or a PL tone or any of the basic stuff.
I don't know that I expect the licensing process. I was actually thinking about that while I was studying for my extra the other day, and it doesn't teach you how to do ham radio. It's just, you're just memorizing questions and the answers.
Right.
And that's how you pass it. You can go on QRZ.com and take all their practice tests. And if you take them long enough, you can pass the test.
And then you get the asshole elitist out there say, well, didn't you take a test and learn this? And
well, you're just an appliance operator, Jared.
Right.
That's what you'll get accused of, right?
Yeah.
I think.
There's got to be some kind of middle ground, though, I think.
Yeah. This is definitely one thing. I like the initiative that the ARRL made with the Learning Center. I definitely think though they need to amp that up and encourage more hams to learn, and not like necessarily force them to do it in testing, but make them want to learn.
I wonder if we're kind of past the days of the whole Elmer thing where, go get someone that's a mentor and have them mentor you. I'm sure there's people out there that are still doing it.
Mhm.
Some of the people that I talk to, I've learned quite a, bit from, but I wonder if we're past it, because I don't know if people are really actively seeking that. They definitely want the knowledge and they want to learn and they want to go somewhere where they can gain that knowledge. And that's why so many people flock to things like YouTube. But, it's hard to show somebody certain things over the internet. Some of it needs to be in person, and I just don't know that people are seeking that out. I guess, years ago people would probably go to the local ham club, but I think because of the perceptions about ham culture, people are hesitant to do that.
And I see so many newer hams that get their license, and they've been licensed for 1 or 2 years. Excuse me. And then they're trying to Elmer new guys, be an Elmer to new people, and they're giving them bad information, or they don't know how to explain it properly because they don't have the operating experience with it.
Yeah, and let's see. Miko Wolf says you can use the manufacturer's software, you can use Chirp, and you can program your radio. It's a lot easier. Yeah, that's true. And, one of the things that I try and push on people, and, you can use the software, but you really should know how to program at least like a simplex frequency with your preferred radio. That's just my opinion. I don't think that people should rely on software all the time. Like, you need to have a little bit of a understanding of how to program your Bofang or whatever you're using.
Yeah, you should definitely know how to program it if it's front panel programmable. There we go.
And Jared's getting trolled. Hold on. Oh,
Always,
hold on
there's
one sec.
all my friends out there.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Freedom by me. 2 Alpha is LARP ship trooper actual splash over. Well done. Well done. Freedom by me. Well done.
So what I will say is the license test is never going to prepare you to be a proficient operator. Being a proficient operator is going to give you, because when I first came to the US, I was licensed in Trinidad, and because I had that experience, I was able to basically just walk into a testing center and pass all the exams because I applied my practical knowledge. So I always recommend people learn the material, but then go and do things practically, and then things will build in your mind a lot easier that way.
So with my little tactical group that I have, I have set up a signal chat with them, and we're going to start doing that. We're all going to get the ones that aren't licensed, they're all going to get their licenses, and I'm going to start directing them through the licensing process and the studying process through a video chat on Signal. But they're going to have to do the work themselves. They're going to have to get the book and actually study, and because I don't want them to come into the group and just me hand them a radio. They're going to have to actually know how to operate it and use the programming software for it, or the front panel programming. So we already have it set up. We don't have dates set up for the class yet, but.
So are you using GMRS as well? Like well, I assume you're using amateur radio for emergency comms or backup comms, whatever you want to call it. Are you using GMRS for that as well?
Yes, we're using GMRS and amateur frequencies, all the above, whatever we want to, whatever our op plan calls for.
Rio, what do you think about using ham radio for emergency communications? Do you think it's practical?
I think so. I have a lot of opinions on this. The main ones are, I think in some cases yes. I think in some cases no. I think that a lot of hams have this idea that we're going to save the world with ham radio. I don't think that's reality. I think though for smaller things that we can definitely help out. Like and I've been gaining a lot of experience worldwide with amateur radio and how it deals with emergency communications. in the US, we have a lot of pretty good infrastructure. Public safety with their tax exempt, tariff free radios are doing fine.
Indeed.
Yeah. Whereas with somewhere like in India, where I've been recently, they rely a lot upon the ham radio. Especially some of the remote areas you go to, like Nagaland and other places you never heard of. They do like disaster drills and stuff like that. So there, but I think on a personal level, yes, I think personally people can use ham radio because it just offers so much. I think that's where our focus on emergency communication should be. It should be on a personal level.
Yeah, I agree. And, unfortunately, it always seems like when we have a natural disaster, so hurricanes, either on the Gulf Coast or some earthquake or other natural disaster somewhere, that's when people seem to really get into radio, and then it goes away after the natural disaster is over. And I think that's unfortunate.
People have very short-term memories.
Yeah, yeah, they do.
That's why you make radio into a hobby. That way you do it every day.
Right. As far as the emergency communications for amateur radio goes, a lot of people want to go out there and freelance, and freelancing is not good because then you have so many rumors getting started and miscommunications. Nobody knows how to work with anyone else. If they would just take some basic incident command classes and NIMS classes to go along with the emergency communications, it would probably go a long way. And then actually develop some kind of a protocol on how you're going to actually use these radios and communicate. And
do groups like races, do they take NIMS and all those classes that you're talking about for emergency command structures and stuff, or do they have their own thing? Do you know?
Races is kind of some do. I think generally you're supposed to be trained to take part in a races officially, but even within like ham radio MCOM, you find like a lot of hams just not following structure. You have like people don't want to take training. People just want to go and wear the yellow vest and that a Baofeng and feel happy.
Same with firearms. They don't want to train. They just want to look cool.
Exactly.
I'll tell you about one incident at the range that before I go, but yeah, no, but definitely some of them actually Oxcom. Those who follow Oxcom, those places that follow Oxcom, they're very excellent with training because Oxcom is training centric.
Mm-hmm.
I know John Peterson very well, so they who designed the whole Oxcom program. Oxcom, I think, is how it should be done because you have a lot of training, and it's knowledge centric. Whereas RACI is kind of like is old fashioned and outdated. Aries is the ARL, and the ARL tries to put training standards, but people just don't obey them.
Right.
So the incident at the range I had was I went in New Jersey to qualify for my New Jersey CCW, and because we have to do that, and there was this guy who was next to me, and I don't know what he was shooting, but he went through like 2 strings, right? And then the RSO came up and said, "Wait a minute, where's your ears?" The guy had no hearing protection on. He just walked straight in, and he was straight up gangster. Just,
Wow.
And the funny thing is, at that
maybe
range,
he was deaf.
he was a young guy. He looked like he was in his 20s. And the thing is, that range, they will give you earplugs for free.
Yeah.
If you ask them for it,
Wow.
I don't get some people. I don't know what he was trying to prove. One guy was a retired cop, and he told me he doesn't wear air protection. He says because on the streets in Newark, we don't have time to put on air protection. I'm like, eye protection. Like what?
How did you roll, Jared, when you worked as a police officer? Did you have any kind of hearing protection, or did you just kind of raw dog it?
Well, we went to the range. Yeah, we wore hearing protection and eye protection.
Not at the range. I mean, on the street.
No.
Yeah.
Same in the military. I mean, when I was way down south, we didn't wear hearing protection in the field either. But at the range, we did, obviously.
Right. Yeah, like my brother, who's in his final years in the Navy, he said a lot of people in there have hearing loss. So,
I bet.
and I was he was at Camp Pendleton, and I stayed with him for a while, and yeah, it's like a lot of noisy stuff goes on military bases,
Especially air bases.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I guess we're a little over an hour, so hour and 15. We did pretty well. I guess we'll wrap this up, I suppose. We'll start with Jared and then give Rhea the last word. But Jared, do you have anything you want to wrap up with?
No, let me see. There's nothing here on JS8. Nope, nothing there. So we did not have any JS8 this time. So
maybe next time.
Maybe next time.
And Rhea, how about yourself? Tell us where to find you on YouTube once again, as well as shortwave.
So you can catch me on youtube.com /@N2RJ. That's my call sign. You can also find me on n2rj.substack.com. That's where I publish the radio show after it's aired on the radio. So I usually do the radio show on Sundays, and then on Monday at around noon Eastern time, it gets published on Substack, and you can listen. You can use your favorite podcast reader. So that's that's where you can find me, and I talk about a lot of stuff regarding radio, shortwave listing, and tech. And Don't mind these plaques on the wall. These are my hobby radio stuff.
I was going to say, you look official back there. So.
Well, this is like, my DXCC and all that kind of stuff that I do. I love DXing.
That's her I love me wall.
Yeah.
Everyone's got to have one, right?
That's right.
Well, awesome. Again, thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. It was a pleasure, and you're very knowledgeable, and hopefully people will check out your channel and also your shortwave broadcast show. So thanks for joining us. I'm going to send us out. So if you both would like to stick around for a moment, I will remove us from the stage and close out the show. And to everyone watching, all of our subs, thanks for watching, as well as those of you who participated in the chat.